You want to do another one?
Yes, please.
Okay. I think two of them that are interesting,
Please.
even if we just do one more today. One is on self-love, and I think it would be interesting to hear you talk about self-love. This story, there's a woman named Jenny in Hawaii, and she was an Olympic athlete. She was a swimmer when she was young. She almost went to the Olympics. She almost qualified, but she just missed it. And she was very, very healthy all her life. So, so sometime, in her adult life, she was diagnosed with a very advanced stage breast cancer. And even as she was going through all of the traditional chemotherapies and those kinds of things to try to treat it, and nothing was working, but she was also doing alternative therapies and remedies, just trying everything and keeping a pretty good attitude. But she was really pretty close to the end. In fact, she showed me a picture of herself, and her head was bald, and she just looked terrible, and so they were doing a very risky treatment, sort of as a last resort, a stem cell rescue, where they take these stem cells out of the body and freeze them, and then give the body these massive doses of chemotherapy to try to kill all the cancer, and then they reintroduce the stem cells. And if it all goes well, then after about 10 days, the stem cells kick in and start to work again. I already know one person who died during that process, but in Jenny's case, it was day 9, and her blood cell count was so low that they admitted her to the hospital. She had been doing this at home because of the possibility of infection in the hospital. So they admitted her, and it was very, very bad. She was completely isolated. They had a sign on her door which meant, basically don't breathe anywhere near this woman, or, she could die. And that night, after she was admitted, she said she was standing in front of the mirror in her hospital room, and she looked at herself, and she saw her bald head and her emaciated frame, and she stood there, and she said that all of a sudden this feeling of compassion for herself just welled up from her belly all the way up and started to spill out in tears. And then she said that she started massaging herself very gently, like a mother would touch her infant. And she did that all over her body, and she started speaking to her body, saying thank you and I love you to her body. And then she went to bed after she finished that. She said she felt very happy. And the next morning, the doctors, they came in, the nurses, they took her blood as they did every day, and a little while later the doctor came in, and he picked up her chart and looked at it, and all of a sudden he started yelling. And everybody on the ward came running to see what had happened. Yes.
To see the miracle.
It was, and he said yesterday her blood count was 7,700, today it's 600. It's completely normal.
Yeah.
I may not have those figures exactly right.
No, that isn't bad. But
and they thought that there must be something wrong. There had to be something wrong.
Yes.
But after a few days, it continued to be normal, and she was released from the hospital. And it's probably now about 8 or 9 years later, and she's still cancer-free. And I wrote about, I put that under what I called self-love, because that's a really big concept in the self-help world, about loving ourselves more, because everyone seems to hate themselves. So I really am seeing more how that fits into your teaching, Ramesh, this whole thing about self-hatred.
This does not fit in with my understanding.
Good, then you'll set me straight.
I'll set you straight, yeah. What happened? But another clear example of grace. Clear example of grace happening.
Nothing to do with self-love.
Nothing to do with self-love.
Okay.
If you say self-love, then you say, if you have self-love, without having self-hate, instead of self-hate, have self-love, and this sort of thing will happen. No. Entirely a matter of destiny. Therefore, grace is destiny. This, I would say, is entirely a matter of grace. Now, self-love, on that point, I'll tell you exactly what really self-love is. A man is a miser. The miser, if he is, because of what the people admire a generous man, therefore I must be generous. So in order to people to admire him, he becomes generous. He does a generous deed. What is the result, Jennifer? Makes him feel bad.
Because he's a miser.
He's a miser. Makes him feel bad. And so for this money I've got to save 10 times more now. The generous man, therefore my point is, a miser is a miser because being a miser makes him feel good. A generous man, if he is not generous, if his wife tells him, hey, you are too generous, don't be so generous. If more you are generous, I have less money. So be careful with your money. So one particular man decides not to be generous. Makes him feel bad. Therefore, a miser feels bad if he is not generous. The generous man feels bad if he is not generous. The miser feels good if he is a miser. The generous man feels good if he is a generous man. Both, ultimately, each of us wants to feel good. Each of us wants to feel, and that really for me is self-love. That for me is self-love, which is natural. I'm not blaming. Self-love is natural. But my only point is, self-love is natural because I work according to the programming in my body-mind organ. But the important point that which does not happen in every case is, understanding this means that the generous man will not hate the miser. If there is an understanding, then the point is, the average person who has this understanding will not hate the miser. He may admire the generous man, but he cannot hate the miser. Psychopath. Horrible things will happen through his action. So, if I see the working of a psychopath, what is the result? My biological reaction is anger and horror. 7-11. Biological reaction, anger and horror. You see? But with the understanding that the psychopath cannot help doing it. The only way the psychopath can feel good is if he does something, whatever his body, mind, can make him do. With that understanding, while my biological reaction will be anger and horror, the egoic reaction will be to sympathize with the man. He didn't choose to be a psychopath. I repeat, biological reaction about something which has happened. And what has happened, the society will judge it. And it's his destiny whether the society, what the society does to him. That part is separate. See what I mean? But as far as I'm concerned, I can't hate him. He didn't choose to be a psychopath. See what I mean? Actions happening to him, he will still have to be responsible to the society, as every one of us is. But I cannot hate him. So with this understanding, self-love, doing whatever I want to be. I'm a miser, I know he's a miser, therefore I'll continue to be a miser. And at the same time, I witness sometimes a generous thing happening. Sometimes there is a burst of generosity in spite of me. Then I don't hate it. If there is a burst of generosity in a miser man, then it happened because he accepted it and makes him feel good. A rare burst of generosity makes the miser feel good. But my point is, I cannot hate a miser. I cannot hate a psychopath. Therefore, self-love is for what happens. And similarly, hate is not there. Hating the other cannot happen.
Could I ask you something?
Please.
It seems that a lot of people try to be someone that they're not. You know, one of the things that just comes up all the time is that instead of, like, say, the miser, to use your example, accepting that he's a miser and recognizing that he feels good to be a miser, it seems that many people don't like the way they are, and they're constantly striving to be different, and so...
And therefore they're miserable.
Yes.
That will be their destiny. Not to accept myself. Continuously wanting to improve myself. Trying my best to improve myself and never getting improved. Frustration.
One of the things that I talked about was honesty, and that seems to be really on the point here, about just being honest with yourself.
Integrity.
But so often we're just not honest with who we really are and what interests us and how we are and what kind of personality we have and those kinds of things. And in the case of one woman, she was just this, you know, she's a high-powered executive, as we say, in the world of business. She runs a $150 million company, and she was just single and had no family. And,
yeah. I see, yeah.
And she had come from, you know, a very, very poor background. Yes.
Humble background. Yeah.
Mother, a drug addict, raised in foster homes, and she was an African American woman. So for her to get to that status in the U.S.,
like
she was first, you know,
rice.
Yes, like that. Exactly. And very, you know, very, very beautiful woman. But, you know, she thought that she had everything that she wanted, everything, because she had achieved that level in society, and she was not married, she had no children, and...
she had everything, including pride.
Including?
Pride.
Yes.
Of achievement.
Maybe so. And then on 9/11, she had gone to the headquarters of her company in Atlanta to give this huge presentation, and her career was, and her position was really riding on this. And she walked into the conference room where they had a TV on, and she got there just in time to see the second plane hit the second of the Twin Towers.
My wife and I did.
What's that?
My wife and I exactly there.
Really?
When we had it on, the first plane had already done the damage. And I still don't know where about it. That plane is flying too low. We heard that flying too low, and the next moment it came in. We saw that. Live.
Yeah.
Yes, so?
So she was watching it the same instant you were.
Yes, absolutely.
And the realization that happened for her in that moment was this. She said simultaneously everybody got up in the room to go and call someone, because everybody wanted to connect with people who were dear to them in that moment.
Yes.
And she sat there and she realized that she had nobody to call. And
there's no one to lose.
Nothing. And nobody even knew she was traveling. Nobody even knew to call her to be concerned about her welfare or anything, you know. And in that moment, she realized that everything that she had in life was nothing for her reason, because she had no one to share that with, no one to pass that on to.
Yes.
And then eventually, just with that realization, very short time after that, it worked out that she took on her niece's 2 small children to raise on her own, and
Yeah.
she's raising these little girls now, and she just talks about what an extraordinary event that has been in her life. She still does her job and runs her big company, but she's raising these two small children, and she said that she had to get so honest to recognize that there was something missing in her life and that she hadn't even known.
But didn't her honesty lead her to make some help, establish some trust for helping people?
I don't know if it resulted in that, but it did open her up to no longer just having her own isolated career without family or anything like that.
Yeah.
Because she had a lot of rigidity around rules with her family. A family member could come and stay with her for 1 month if they needed help, but that was it.
Yeah.
And then this niece came, and it went on after 30 days, and she was enjoying the children, and her niece was actually pregnant with one of the children that she eventually started raising. But that was I was talking in the book about honesty and using that as a story about honesty, because it just seems that as we were speaking, so many people just really aren't honest about the way they live their lives, and they're so conditioned. Even I, when I got divorced 3 years ago, we actually got divorced in secret, because where I lived it would have been in the papers, and I was so conditioned.
Admiration from others
to be married.
Yeah.
I was raised in the South, and it was very important to have a husband.
Yes.
And I didn't even tell anybody that I was divorced for almost 2 years. My conditioning was so strong. I wasn't honest.
But you are not living together.
No, we weren't, but we had a situation where it was very easy, because for a long time we had 2 homes.
I see, yeah.
And so it was very common for him not to be with me, and we were still very close, so we would still spend time together, and we had our children, and but I suffered a lot, and it just seems to me that so often when we're not honest, that honesty is a really valuable thing to be able to experience if it's our grace to have that.
What you are saying is, it's not so difficult to live with someone who is dishonest. Very difficult to live myself knowing that I'm dishonest.
I think I have trouble living with other people who are dishonest also.
But much easier than when you know you're yourself dishonest.
That was very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you realize that you have to be honest. Now, what is all this? What is the honesty?
Yes.
In your book?
Yes.
Honesty.
Yes.
Now look, the woman suddenly realizing, what did she realize?
That what she had wasn't bringing her happiness.
Therefore, what she realized was not being honest. What she realized was that having money did not really mean happiness. Suddenly I have money, but I have no one to share it with. So that again is a happening. Sudden realization that I have money, but money has not brought me the real happiness I'm seeking. So it's not honesty as such, but it's the realization that money and happiness are two different things. That money is pleasure which money gives is part of the flow of life. But this deep happiness which you get through personal relationship, leading to something even deeper. And the whole point basically is not necessarily in her control. she could well have seen what she did. And this need not have happened. This again is an occurrence which had to happen. That was her destiny. But my point is not really a question of honesty, that's what I'm saying.
I see.
Not really a question of honesty, but realizing that all her money would not give her the real happiness that she's seeking. So she decided that the happiness she wants, she will get to start with taking two poor children and raising them. See what I mean? So there's really no question of honesty as such. The realization that the money and the pleasures which money brings him in the flow of life is not really the happiness she wants. Okay, so now Jennifer, have you
Yes.
thought about more items?
Yes.
Please.
Okay. I was looking through the book last night and I saw 4 things that I thought would be very
Great.
interesting. We may not have time to do them all today.
Yes, yes.
And one of them that the conversation with David really made me think of was
Yeah.
a chapter about receptivity, because you were talking about thoughts coming from source. And in this particular one, I feel that the
Now we're
person...
talking about receptivity.
Yes.
And what was the incident?
Well, the person
Right.
that I interviewed for this
Yes.
has been here before.
Oh.
She's well known, and you'll probably remember her. She's the princess and actress Catherine Oxenberg. You may remember she came, I don't know, I think her daughter threw up on your couch or something.
I'm sorry?
I said her daughter threw up on your couch, I was told.
Oh.
You don't remember? Okay.
Oh, what happened about that?
I don't know, but it's interesting given the content of the story, because
Yes, go ahead.
you know how you talk about how we come in with so much pleasure and so much pain, and when you looked at Catherine Oxenberg's life, it seemed to be like
I remember
a
now.
fairy tale princess, because she really is a princess. Her mother
I remember now, yes.
was
She's a
Princess
princess,
Elizabeth of
yes,
Yugoslavia.
Yes.
She's directly descended from Catherine of Russia, for whom she's named.
Yes, I
She's
remember
related
now.
to, either by marriage or blood, to all of the royal houses of Europe.
Yes.
And as she was growing up, she spent time with famous celebrities like Richard Burton and Prince Charles, and this was her life. In fact, Prince Andrew of England actually asked her to marry him at one point. And she was accepted to Harvard University. She was very, very smart, very beautiful. She decided to go for a modeling career with Vogue, and the minute they looked at her, she just was given a 10-page spread in this, great magazine and fashion magazine. And on the outside, it just looked as though she had absolutely everything.
Yes.
But on the inside, she was suffering so severely because she was actually molested as a baby. And from the time of her...
Again, to interrupt, sorry to interrupt. Again, Jennifer, the basic duality.
Right.
Everything that you can imagine. But on the other hand, she had experience of being molested.
Right.
Probably by someone close to her.
Yes, it was. It was a family member, not one of her parents, but...
Not a stranger.
And so from the time she was 18, when she became sexually active,
Yes.
she had bulimia, this eating disorder. Are you familiar with that, where people, you throw up after
Yes,
you've eaten?
yes.
And
Anorexia or something.
it's like anorexia, it's just a different kind of eating disorder.
Yes.
And so these two things were going on, this perfection on the outside, and then this very deep, dark secret on the inside, And she was very gracious in sharing the story with me of how her bulimia was cured, actually.
Yeah.
And she said what had happened was that her grandmother, with whom she was very close, died, and she wanted to do something special, and she looked in this Tibetan Book of the Dead and found a ceremony and did this one evening. And that night she had a dream, which she called a God dream. She said it's one of those things that happens.
What dream?
She called it a God dream.
God's dream.
Yeah, and not sort of a normal dream, but one of these sort of special things. And it's a long story, but it had lots of light and water in it.
Yes.
And about 2 weeks, she paid attention to it. I mean, she felt that there was some significance to it. And a couple of weeks later, she was sitting in the bathtub when all of a sudden the experience that she had had in her dream actually happened in real life. And she was just literally bathed in light, and there was all this experience of water. And instead of being afraid, because she had this dream, she said she felt completely connected to Source.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And at that moment, something was so transformed in her that she's never thrown up again since. That eating disorder just completely disappeared. But she felt, and I felt when I was writing about it, that this thing about receptivity, that there was, what impressed me the most was that it seems as though messages can come to us from anywhere, through another human being, through a thought, through a dream, and that's why I wrote about it in terms of being receptive, because it just seems as though the input from Source can come from anywhere, not even just a thought. I mean, David can say something, you can say something, some child in the street can say something.
That is why Einstein used the word from outside. That means the mind, the intellect didn't create it. He did not invent or discover the equation. Came to him from outside. So the outside can be anywhere in the mechanism of it. Basically, it's the source. That's what I'm saying. Outside can only mean the source. Whatever may be the apparent outside, as I say, again repeat, whether it's a good thought or a bad thought, it can only come from the source. So that thought can lead to something, which is precisely what is supposed to happen. So, you were saying about receptivity?
Well, it just has broadened my awareness of how God...
On that account in your book, how did you proceed with that? On receptivity?
Oh, well, I shared that story, and then I shared another story about being open, which I could share with you also. I was coming back from, I mean, to me, this is so much about, whether we use the word openness or receptivity. Listening is such, being on the receiving end of communication can be so incredibly supportive of us, because I used to find that even though I was supposed to be this great communicator, right? I was a writer and a speaker, and yet in my own personal life with my husband, we were always clashing, because both of us seemed to always want to be on the speaking end of communication.
So what you're saying,
nobody wanted to listen.
Both of you wanted to have the last word.
Exactly.
Every time.
Exactly. And he would be saying something, and I would just immediately be thinking of what I was going to say next, instead of really listening to what he was saying. And so when
that is the point.
Nothing was working. There couldn't be harmony in that situation. And then one day while I was working on the book, I was flying home from somewhere, and it turns out that the man sitting next to me was an American soldier who was returning home from the war in Iraq. And he had been stationed in the northern part with the Kurdish people. And he started telling me stories, because I said, please tell me about your experience there. And before you know it, I was taking out my pen and paper and asking him if I could take notes on what he was saying, because it was very beautiful. He said he loved the Kurdish people.
But you have to take notes? You don't have a machine to record it?
I didn't have I didn't have at the time. And
I can still imagine you wanting to make notes, because your notes will be not only just what you have heard, But at that time, your thoughts on the subject. Therefore, I can understand you're making notes. Yes, carry on.
I wanted to get his words exactly right.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
because what he was telling me when I asked him about his experience was that his observation was that the Kurdish people were no different from people anywhere in the world. They wanted the same things. They wanted to be able to eat. They wanted to have happiness. They wanted their children to be able to go to school.
Yeah.
And he said that the way that he connected with them and had such a beautiful relationship with them was that he, whenever possible, would remove his weapon and sit down and just listen to them. Just listen.
Yeah.
And I found myself thinking, this listening, this is a secret weapon, really. Just being able to listen, because we never know what's going to come to us from the outside. And I talked about his story in conjunction with another story from a woman named Leah Green,
Yeah.
who founded an organization called Compassionate Listening Project.
Yes.
And she is an American Jew, and she was trained in this work. I forget the name of the woman who founded it, but it was very influenced by the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh. And her work started out by going to the Middle East and taking Palestinians and Israelis and sitting them down in a room, sometimes where they would have the opportunity to talk to each other for the first time. You know, these people all their lives have grown up with this idea. You know, the Palestinians think all Israelis are bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the Israelis think all Palestinians are bad, and most of them have never had any personal
The
contact.
Palestinians say Israel should never be a nation. Israel, Palestine should never be a nation.
Right. And even before she told me her story, when I was asking her if maybe she could contribute something for me, even when she told me what she would talk about, I got the essence of it. She said, I want to tell you a story about when I had a seminar going, and I was bringing these people together, and an Israeli woman stood up and told her story, coming from Germany, escaping from the Holocaust. And then a Palestinian woman stood up and told her story for the first time. And the humanity that was able to be experienced in that exchange, and then seeing these two women walk to each other and embrace each other, when their whole lives they had just had hatred for the other.
Yeah.
And it was all because of listening, of just listening, that receptivity. I felt like all of these things were really tied together. You know, the story of Catherine Oxenberg and her being receptive to something coming through a dream that then changed her life, and this American soldier from Iraq just having this heartfelt connection with these people because he was willing to listen to them. He didn't care about telling them anything. He just was on the receiving end of that. And since writing this book, I learned so much from my own life. That was the greatest result for me. You know, the book really wasn't a great commercial success at all, but for me, I have learned to stop thinking that I really have something to say. You know, I used to think as a speaker that I had something really important
to give to others.
Right. You know, that I was going to make people's lives better or something.
Yeah.
And since this, I've come to realize that there's for me, there's so much greater value in just receiving. There's just, and here in India this week, oh my God, the events coming to me and the people coming to me, and I mean, outside this time with you, you know, which is indescribable.
So,
That's
so
all.
tell me, Jennifer, what do you think is the basis of this receptivity? What do you think is the basis of this receptivity? What do you think?
I think it's
Did you
just,
say anything about it in your book? What is the basis of this deep receptivity?
I didn't talk about what the basis was, but it seems to me that as I realize more and more that I'm not the doer, then I don't even imagine that I have something to say. If there's something to be said through me, then it comes out
Yeah, my point is, the basis of deep receptivity is total listening. I call it total listening. And I heard a similar word was used by J. Krishnamurti. And all I ask of you is to listen to me totally. And that's what I ask here. And what do I mean when someone is not listening to me totally? What do I mean? When is someone not listening to me totally? Very, very simple, Jennifer. Someone is not listening to me totally when I find he doesn't have the patience to let me finish my sentence. He doesn't have the patience to let me finish my point. He interrupts in the middle with a question. Before I finish my point, he says, yes, but. The German, I'm told, he says, aber. Yes, but. So many aber. That is the point. So my point is, please listen to me totally. In other words, when you listen to me, don't think about something else. Don't think about what your experience, which makes you ask yes but. Listen to me totally. Listen to me totally. Give your brain a chance to understand what I'm trying to convey. And after you have listened totally, judge it as critically as you want. Listen to me totally. Be sure what I'm trying to convey to you. After that, give it as critically as you want. And if it doesn't appeal, throw it out. I'm not saying accept my concept, no. But before you throw it out, or you accept it, you have to listen to it totally. Therefore, my point is, the basis of this receptivity is to be able to listen totally, which I find so clearly in you. You listen totally. And listen, and make no mistake, listening to it totally is clearly seen by the other. Clearly seen by the other. If I'm listening to someone, it's clearly seen by the other, which makes him more easy to deal with me. Total listening makes the person narrating something be more personal. So this is about you and someone else, subject object, me listening to you or you listening to me. That is where deep total listening comes in. But where the receptivity is from the source, at that point the mind has to be totally vacant. Receptivity, total listening makes it easier for me to have your point of view, then judge it. But the receptivity from the source is totally different. For me to be receptive to the source, my mind has to be vacant. My intellect has to surrender. And then when my mind is totally vacant, and that can only be when I'm really not doing anything, I'm not thinking about anything. So in other words, why do so few people have that receptivity to be receptive to the source? Basically, their destiny, bottom line. Basically, their destiny. But what is the mechanism? The mechanism of it is that it is their destiny to be so concerned about the bodies of daily living. What will happen to this, what will happen to that? The thinking mind is so pervading all the entire activity of the brain, that there is no possible chance of there being the slightest receptivity to whatever may come from the source. So subject to the fact it's all destiny, the mechanism of it is that something can come from the source only when the mind is vacant. And the mind is vacant. In a particular case, when I've been absorbed, my intellect has been absorbed with a problem. The problem becomes insoluble. And the intellect really surrenders. I will not think any more about it. It's a waste of time. So when the intellect totally surrenders, then for quite some time the mind is totally vacant. And that is the time when a communication from the source can happen. Two different about the same thing. Receptivity to one you are talking to. There the point is not to want to have the last word. In a subject-object listening, the point there is not to want the last word. Then you are receptive to the other. But the receptivity to the source, totally different. Receptivity to the source, the receptivity to someone else is to be able to listen totally. But receptivity to the source, the mind has to be vacant. So for the mind to be vacant, even the working mind shouldn't function. For the mind to be vacant, I'm not talking only about thinking mind of it, but for the vacancy to be able to receive the communication from the source, the mind has to be vacant of both the working mind and the thinking mind.
I'd like to ask a question about that, because so often I'll notice that, let's say I'm getting ready to go out,
Yeah.
and I'll be leaving in a little while,
Yeah.
and the thought will come, remember to take that thing with you. And
I'm sorry?
so maybe the thought will come,
Yes.
don't forget to take this particular item that you're going to need later.
I see, yes,
some item.
yes.
And I've learned that, to me, that feels like a thought from the source, because what I've learned is that if I don't pay attention to it and go get that item right then, it's very likely that I'll forget it, and then later I'll think, oh my gosh, I even thought about taking that, and then I just didn't get up at the moment and go do that. That seems like it's coming from source to me, that it's just like a nice little reminder. Am I wrong about that, Ramesh?
No, that is not something which comes from outside.
Okay.
Because you are concerned with something. You are concerned with, and about that there is a thought that you must take this.
Okay.
I want to take this item. That is the best. So, on this point, you know my view?
No.
Do it now. You have to take some item, put it in your handbag now.
I'm learning this. Is that working mind, Ramesh?
It is working.
Okay.
You know, Heiner Singelman, my friend who arranged the seminar, he was telling me, his father was a typical German father. Very strong, and he said, I've forgotten all his instructions. I've forgotten all except one. And he said, do it now. He told me in German, I've forgotten what it is. Do it now. That is about the efficient living. That is efficient living. Nothing to do with communication numbers. Yeah, one moment.
Just a very brief question.
I know, but still. Do you have any more? So, the incident that we're talking now about receptivity, do you have any further question? on this receptivity?
Well, I would like to bring up something that I think is closely connected to
Go ahead,
receptivity.
go ahead.
And that's intuition.
Yes.
And I've seen you write a little bit about it, but I wasn't sure that I really understood it, and that was one of the things that I wrote about. So I wondered if we could talk about that.
Yes.
Okay. So I had two examples, two
Yes.
stories. One was personal, and
Yes.
one was for someone else. And in my own case, when I was in my early 20s,
Yeah.
I moved to Washington, D.C. right after I graduated from college.
Yes.
And it was just a fantastic time for me, you know, just out in the world on my own for the first time in this big, beautiful city. And I had a great relationship, you know, with a boyfriend, and I was so happy. I had a wonderful job working
Yeah.
for a presidential commission, and every morning I would walk downtown to go to work. And one day was when the thought started coming up, there must be something more to life than this.
I see, yes.
And it wouldn't go away.
Yeah.
Every morning that was
Sure.
coming up.
Yes.
And then one day,
Yes.
as I was walking by this building that's the headquarters of an organization known as the Peace Corps, the U.S. Peace Corps,
Yes.
which is a worldwide organization of volunteers.
Yes.
I just found myself stopping in front of this building, and I said to myself, what are you doing? And the next moment, I was walking in
You found yourself walking.
and asking them for an application, and I took the application home, and a couple of months later, I was accepted.
Yes.
And then I had to decide, you know, am I going to leave this fantastic life that I have here,
Yes.
including this wonderful relationship, or am I going to just sort of jump off a cliff and go to Africa for 2 years?
Yes.
And it seemed as though there was no choice. I was just compelled.
Yes. Yes.
And I always looked at that as intuition, but
No, that is not intuition.
it doesn't seem like
no,
that.
that is not intuition.
Okay.
For instance, before that, you saw something. Whatever the
Peace Corps.
yeah, and that is what took you there. And that again is your destiny. Intuition. You know, do I do this or do I do that? You are not sure. Then an intuition is something which comes out giving you a solution. Intuition, it has nothing to do with your intellectual thing. And intuition may or may not happen. And that, according to my concept, that's part of your genes, I would imagine. Some people are more inclined to have intuition, some people not. But the point about intuition is that the mistaken notion is what you get by intuition is supposed to be right. That isn't. That if your destiny is to have something wrong, then you will have an intuitive feeling to do something wrong. Intuitive feeling to do something which turns out to be wrong. Then I have the need to partially go.
That explains a lot, Ramesh, actually. May I ask you about whether, there's another story,
Please.
whether this is intuition or not.
Please.
This is the same woman that I was talking about the other day,
Yes.
Lynn Twist, who was a founder of the Hunger Project, and she was in Africa. She was leading a team of 18 volunteers. Pardon?
Joan Holmes, World Hunger Project,
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
the top person in that World Hunger Project is a lady called Joan Holmes.
This was not Joan. Her name is Lynn Twist, and she was one of the founding members.
Oh, I see.
One of the founders.
Yes.
So they were in Senegal, and they had been asked to, this team, they had been asked to partner with some people way out in the desert who were really struggling with a shortage of water. And they either needed to find a source for water or move. And as she described going out to this place, it was really quite an amazing description, because at some point the road ended and the drivers just continued on the sand until finally they were traveling by compass, and then they stopped and got out of the car and listened, and way in the distance they could hear these drums. And then they got these smiles on their faces and they started going in that direction. And all of a sudden, all these hundreds of villagers came swarming toward them. And Lynn noticed that, despite the intense heat and the air that was just filled with dust, that these people were so happy. They were so poor, and yet they were so happy. And after they celebrated the arrival of these, they seemed to know intuitively that she was their leader, and they danced with her, and then they pulled her into a circle to sit down. And she noticed that it was all men in the circle, and that all of the women were back outside the circle. It was a Muslim community. And after she listened to them talk for a while, she watched the women in the background, and she felt that there was some key to an answer in the women, and she asked permission to talk to them. And the men were very, very surprised, but eventually they said yes, and they offered a man to be the translator. And in meeting with them, the women told her that they were absolutely sure that they knew of an underground lake, which could be a source of water for them.
Yes.
But the men wouldn't listen to them about it, nor would they let the women dig, because that wasn't considered to be women's work.
Yeah.
And so through the help of Lynn, negotiating with them, they said that they would agree to letting the women do that. And they did find this source of water, which eventually became this huge, wonderful community project that supported 17 villages and became very organized. They, built a tank and all this. So would that be an example of intuition?
Yes.
Okay.
It would be, yes.
Okay.
That would be intuition.
Okay. A knowingness.
I don't know about knowingness, but intuition. What do you mean by knowingness, Jennifer?
Something subtler than a thought, a feeling that there's water under the ground. Just a subtle feeling
That is an intuition. That would be an intuition. But again, whether that intuition is right or wrong, it never can say it's an intuition. I'll tell you a joke about intuition.
Okay, good.
A young lady was walking along the pavement, and suddenly she heard about stop. So she stopped, and the huge boulder fell right in front of her. If she hadn't stopped, she would have been dead. She continued to walk, and at the end of the road, she had to cross a road, and the electric walk. But before she could walk, again, stop. So she stopped. And the drunken driver came along, and although the traffic signal said walk, if she had, she would have been dead. Now she was really impressed. So she said, "Who are you?" And the boy said, I'm your
Guardian angel.
I'm your guardian angel. I'm your guardian angel. So she said, "Oh, you're my guardian angel, are you? What the hell were you doing when I got married?" So when intuition happened,
So Ramesh, would you just say it again, what you said a few minutes ago? I think that you said that intuition is when a solution comes to you about something.
Oh, no,
it
no.
may be right.
No.
What was it that you said?
no, intuition is something which happens. It could happen anytime. But that intuition may or may not be right. But we often say, intuition, we always say that the intuition will make you do the right thing. All I'm saying is, may not. But intuition is something which comes out of what is not intellectually thought out. And intuition is a feeling which arises totally separate from your intellectual function, over which you have not the slightest control. Okay?
Yes.
Sure. So, do you have another incident?
Yes, there's one more that
Please.
I would love to share with you
Please.
because this is it's about intention,
Yes.
and this is a very, very big thing in the self-help arena
Yeah.
right now. The power of intention.
Yeah.
And of course, the basic idea is that we have a goal, or it's often taught in seminars and things that if you really want something to happen,
Yeah.
you should sit down and clarify your goal about it,
Yeah.
or get clear about your intention.
Yeah.
What is your intention?
Yeah.
And that seems to have been part of my process when I wrote my first book that became so successful. You know, at the time, I was getting just sick and tired of the work I was doing. I was teaching business writing and technical writing in the corporate world,
Yeah.
and I thought I was going to go crazy. And so one day I sat down and I closed my eyes and I just said, well, what is it that you really want to do?
Yeah.
And I thought, I would like to talk to people about not how to write a better business letter, but how to live a better life.
Right. Yes.
And so that was my intention. And from that, I decided that I would start a speaking business to talk about things that I had learned that I felt made my life better. Then the next thing that happened was that I made up a little flyer to start my business, and then a very close friend of mine, who is also a corporate trainer, came into my office one day and she saw the flyer and she said, Jennifer, I've been wanting to do this for 4 years. Let me do it with you. And so we ended up partnering in this speaking business, and we said, what do we want to do? And we sat down and we created an intention for the business, which was essentially that we wanted to inspire women around the world, and we wanted to help women to realize their potential, essentially. And so then we started speaking, and that we always had that intention in mind. And then when the first Chicken Soup for the Soul book came out, we knew the creator of that when it became a bestseller, and we went to him and we asked him if we could.
Yeah.
His name is Jack Canfield.
No, who is it? What is it?
He was the person who first created this series of books that has sold over 100 million copies now.
I see.
And the first one had come out and it had become a best-selling book.
Yeah.
And we knew him.
I see.
So we, as part of our desire to
Part
talk
of
to
your
women.
strategy.
Yes.
Part of your strategy.
And part of our heartfelt
Yeah.
desire,
Yeah.
we went to him and we proposed to him that we do a chicken soup for the woman's soul, because that was in line with what we were doing. And he said yes to that. And so we sat down and we again created our intention that we wanted this book to touch the hearts of women around the globe, inspire them, open them, expand their hearts. And 16 months later, the book came out, and within 2 months, it had sold 1 million copies and was #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. And it's such a huge thing right now, this thing about intention. And I'm not sure that intention has anything to do with it. That success happened, and all along we thought that it was because we were so clear about our intention. And I would love to hear you talk about that. It's just a huge, huge concept in the West. Wayne Dyer is a hugely successful speaker worldwide, and he has a book and a public television series called The Power of Intention. And there's this very popular DVD out now called The Secret, and it's all about the law of attraction and how when we're clear about what we want and when we put our attention and intention on it, then we will attract that. And I'm just not sure that all that's true from everything you're saying.
Not as far as I'm concerned. Only that will succeed, which is supposed to succeed. according to God's will, cosmic law, in part of the total concentrated intention. If it is not supposed to succeed, it will not succeed. That is the bottom line, Jennifer, as far as I'm concerned. Receptivity, the mechanism. I'll tell you, it's happening so often. Now, like in cricket, there's World Cup ahead after 2 weeks. I'm talking about cricket, but it applies to any game. In cricket, you see, someone who is supposed to win, lose. Someone who is not supposed to lose, win. So they go to someone who lost, although they were supposed to win. So I'm talking about the game of cricket, which has been happening so. Oh, they say, why did we lose? Why did we lost? Because we batted badly. Our bowling was worse, and our fielding was atrocious. That's why we lost. The other one, I said, we batted beautifully, we bowled very effectively, and our fielding was wonderful. Both these, according to me, frankly, are descriptions of the mechanism of winning or losing. The mechanism of winning or losing. The whole basic fact is,
I see.
if you are supposed to win, you will win. So why did you play? My point is, did you play badly intentionally? You didn't play badly intentionally. Therefore, knowing that in order to win, you have to bat well, field well, bowl well. Why did you do that badly? Isn't that the core question? And the only answer is because we are destined to. The rest of it is the mechanism. And that applies to every sport. And at the extreme, as I told you when I mentioned it, the tennis game between champion number 1 and the other is nowhere 147 or something. Each time when he came to the 1 round and final, he had a very tough time with all the opponents. And yet, there he was. Why? Because it was destiny to win that tournament. Therefore, he did precisely what ought to have been done. Or more accurately, everything happened precisely the way it is supposed to happen for the winning to take place. Basically, everything is predetermined. That is not. Everything is predetermined. That is my basic point. And as I say, it's my concept. But the most world-famous mathematician and physicist, Stephen Hawking, he's gone on record, at the moment, you know what I mean, the one in the wheelchair, an invalid in the wheelchair. He's gone on record. He has written an essay, Is Everything Predetermined? One essay, 10-12 pages, beautifully written in simple matters. He takes up and goes through various notions concerning with free will. Finally, in a 4-line concluding paragraph, he said, is everything predetermined? Yes, comma, it is. For me, it's a concept. For him, the conclusion based on his calculation. Everything is predetermined.